Hey guys, it's Sunday afternoon. The weather is so dreary outside. I wanted to take a break from writing to chat about a few things. I'm about to reach 100 days in this writing challenge that I decided to give myself. Basically me writing 2,000 words every day to complete my novel. It really started because I was struggling to make headway in the book that I was writing, which was a literary thriller. Hello everyone, my name is Van and I am an author. My books include Girl Giant and the Monkey King and Girl Giant and the Jade War for middle grade readers, as well as the upcoming Auntie Q's Golden Claws Nail Salon. That's coming out next year. It's another middle grade. It's my first contemporary only novel, as in there's no magical elements to it, but it does include a lot of aunties working in a nail salon, so you could consider that a form of magic. I also write books for adults, including the Monstrous Mrs. Mai, which is titled that way because all of the main characters in the book have the middle name Mai, and that's based on the fact that all of my sisters and I have the same middle name. My second adult historical fantasy book is called Silver and Smoke. That just came out in February, and that is about old Hollywood, ghosts, magic, and demons, and it's very spooky and very eerie, and I loved writing it. My videos are all about self-improvement and productivity and just living a wholesome life, and if that is your jam, please give me a like and subscribe. I have an author friend named Yume Katase who wrote this newsletter, and in it she says that she doesn't get writer's block. She just constantly always has writer's block, and her job is to basically combat this writer's block and to fight it, to basically work to push past it. And part of the reason that I guess I was struggling creatively was because I was writing this new genre that I had never written in before. Most of my books have been middle grade fantasy or historical fantasy, so they always had some sort of magical component. And this book is actually somewhat speculative, but it has no magical elements, which is actually not my first contemporary no magic sort of book, but it was my first type of book in the adult realm. So I really struggled with it, and I decided to give myself this challenge of writing 2,000 words a day because drafting is quite possibly the worst part of the writing process for me. I find it so incredibly painful, mostly because there is this gap between my skills versus my taste that is kind of a famous gap that Ira Glass has been known to talk about in this really famous quote, where there's a large gap between your abilities versus your taste, and because you have good taste and you lack the current ability to meet those standards, you're going to struggle in this part of the creative process. Despite me knowing all of this, it's still very painful, and because I'm aware of how painful this process is, I wanted to get through it as fast as possible, and so I challenged myself to write 2,000 words every day. The idea at first was to just get to 30 days, because the sooner I put it down on paper, the sooner I can fix it into something that I can actually be proud of. The idea of the challenge at first was to just hit 30 days. Really, my ultimate goal was to actually finish the book, and what I usually do whenever I have a big challenge like this or some huge goal that I'm trying to attain or I'm trying to work toward is I will give myself little incremental milestones, and really it's just kind of like a mind trick to convince myself to get there and then to maybe progress further. So at first I was trying to tell myself, like, write 2,000 words every day for 7 days, and then the challenge was actually the weekend because I don't have as much control over my free time on the weekend as I used to now that I have a kid. But once I got through my first weekend, reaching 30 days was actually not that hard. Of course, it was hard in the sense that I still had to sit down and write these 2,000 words, but over time it became easier. And I actually have a whole video on the progress that I made when I reached 56 days, which in itself was monumental because I was really only aiming for 30 days or finishing the book. And I actually achieved both. I finished the book, not in 30 days, but I finished the book when I reached 55 days. And it was a very huge accomplishment. And I think the book is way longer than it's supposed to be. Like most standard adult novel lengths are about 100,000 words. This book that I finished was somewhere around 120, maybe 140,000 words. That's insane. So I'm not going to think about that right now. In fact, I'm going to start revising it in a few weeks. When I reach this goal of finishing the book, I actually didn't want to stop writing because I've written other books in the past. I know to set the book aside before I go back and revise it. And so even though I know that there's a lot to do in this novel, I don't want to just jump back in and start editing it right now. My brain is not in the right space. So even if I jumped right back in to edit it, it's not going to make the right decisions for this story because it's sitting a little too close to home right now. I need to set it aside for a while. And in between setting it aside, the best thing you can do is work on another project. If I was in the middle of a book contract where I had to stop and edit a different book, then I would do that, but I'm not right now. In fact, I just finished copy edits on my next middle grade novel that's coming out next year, which is called Auntie Q's Golden Claws Nail Salon. Copy edits, at least for me, are not as emotionally laborious because these are just sort of technical issues that copy editors bring up. They don't have much to do as far as the story goes. So I get through those really quickly. But aside from that, I didn't have another project that I could focus on in a different brain space. But I have this need to continue to be productive in some way. Once I finished with my challenge, I actually just then kept writing and I started drafting another story right away. This is the first time that I've ever actually, well, I can't say it's the first time I've ever actually done this, but it's the first time I've tracked myself doing this. So I don't know exactly how successful or how healthy this is going to be. Actually, I don't know how healthy or successful this whole challenge is going to end up being. I know for a fact that it is not sustainable. I don't think that anyone should be writing or producing or working creatively at this constant output and churning out of words, because I'm pretty sure that my words that I'm churning out 2,000 words a day for 100 days is actually not amazing quality. But the idea behind it is that writing is just rewriting for me. And drafts are written in layers and stories are written in layers. And the first draft has always been super painful for me, but laying it down as fast as possible has been the best way that I've ever gotten through any projects. Now I'm going to talk about how I did it, because now that I look back on this challenge, I realize that even though it sounds really easy, because I'm at the end and I make it sound really easy, I really struggled with it at first. And I struggled with so many different aspects of a challenge like this. First of all, just finding the time to do it. I have a full-time job and I have a 4-year-old, and my husband and I still like to do things together. I'm constantly navigating what I can do in my free time outside of the obligations that I have committed to, which is like work and family stuff, which is not to say that I don't enjoy doing that stuff. I'm just saying that those are the struggles in my schedule. And so when I do have free time, I have to be very strict about how I divide up the time that I am allotting. Let's just say that in any given day, I only have about 2 hours of free time, which that sounds ridiculous to some people, but that is literally my life right now, because I work a lot and I have a long commute. And on top of writing, I also love to run, which takes a large chunk of time as well. I'm not training for a race, but I still like train, so I have to give up and sacrifice things out of my schedule in order to commit to a writing challenge like this, which I'm not saying here as a humble brag. I'm just saying that when you commit to a challenge like this, that's one of the cons. Yes, it's possible. It might not be sustainable. I probably won't keep this up. I'm already starting to feel a little burnt out. Not only that, but like time-wise, I don't know that I want to keep making these sacrifices. It was okay to put this time aside dedicated to writing, but I still have other needs in my life. I still want to balance some other things that I want to do. In that sense, it required a lot of sacrifice, and it's not easy, but it's possible to do this for a certain amount of time. First, the most important thing I learned how to do was to stop being so precious about my writing. I used to be that person who had to have the perfect notebook and the perfect pen or the perfect writing situation where there's ambience music or there's a candle burning or this whole perfect scenario where I'm inspired. I needed so many things in order to just even get started. And even then, getting started was such a chore because it really was all in my brain. And this is part of executive dysfunction if you're neurodivergent. But one thing I really had to stop myself from doing is to just stop being so precious about the writing process, to just charge in and get it done. And I think what helped unlock that for me was the fact that because I only had 1 hour out of the day, that pressure and that restriction really forced me to just get in and get writing. I stopped caring so much about having the right writing tools. I used to write books all by hand. I had the perfect fountain pen and the notebook and everything. But I developed carpal tunnel syndrome and a number of other issues, but it became harder for me to write by hand. For like a whole year, honestly, I really struggled with finding the right tools that made writing easier and less painful on my hands so that I could continue to do this without causing further injury. And what really nailed it for me was buying a split keyboard that I used in conjunction with a foot pedal as a space bar. And that really became life-changing for me because that allowed me to continue writing without adding too much pain to the process. And by pain, I mean physical pain, because emotional pain, that's still there, baby. I just charged in and cranked out 2,000 words every day and stopped worrying about whether it was good or not. And the second thing that made it easier was that I made myself hyper-focus on completing this task. Because I have ADHD, I tend to over-obsess over something. And if I can make that over-obsession or that hyper-focus my book for the duration of the challenge, then I can get it done. This is something I managed to convince myself to do. I like drafting the book as fast as possible because usually when I do get a new idea, I do become hyper fixated on it and I do obsess over it. So I try to capitalize on this as much as possible so that I can crank out the book while I'm still very obsessed and very excited about it. That honeymoon food will not last, which is why I build up a system and put it in place so that I can get through the book and the project without fail. The third thing that made it a lot easier for me was I created an opening and closing ritual. Surprisingly, that came out of the logistics of literally just talking on camera to introduce the fact that I was going to start writing, recording myself writing. And then because I was recording myself writing in this other vlog that you can totally watch if you want to, I felt the pressure that everyone was watching me and there was this accountability because the camera was on. I felt like I can't stop writing and put away the camera until I'm done. Then I would finish writing and then I would close it out on camera. And that became a closing ritual for me, which was a surprise. I didn't actually set out to do that. That was not the intention, but it created this process in my brain that just made it a lot easier to get this challenge done, to get my 2,000 words in every day and then be done with it. The fourth thing is that I reminded myself that the time will pass anyway. So if I really think about it, this past year in 2025, other than having Silver and Smoke released as a published novel, I haven't actually worked on anything until this challenge. I've kind of dabbled here and there. I've written some short stories that I had no intention of publishing, but I haven't dived deep into a project. And those days passed anyway. I had nothing to show for it. I mean, I still had my life and my friends and my family, but I didn't have a project at the end to be like, oh, here, I wrote a book. At least with this challenge, I wrote this book and it might not be a good book, but at least I wrote it. And I can say I have 140,000 words to show that I did this in a month in 2025. The time is going to pass anyway. And at least in doing this project, I have something tangible that I can show that I did for it, even if it's just to myself. This is the last thing, and it's going to sound a little woo-woo, but I didn't realize that I was actually doing this. I kind of imagined actually making this video where I talked about how I would feel at the end of the challenge and what I learned. I visualized the outcome and manifested the dream self that I would be once I had completed this project. And it worked because here I am. I'm making the video that I thought I was going to make about all the things I learned as part of this project and how, at the end of the day, I'm very proud of myself for doing this. Not because of the actual project, because I still don't know yet if it's going to sell, if it's going to become a book. Despite all of my projects really becoming books in the end, I really don't know. Not every project is guaranteed to become a book, but I've come to learn that it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because I think to me, what really matters is the actual creation of the project and what I go through and how it changes me. And the byproduct is very fun. Of course, I want this to become a book. I want it to touch people's lives. I want to hold it in my hands. But at the end of the day, I just really enjoyed creating this story and creating these characters and learning what I needed to learn as I was writing this, because writing helped me to unlock a lot of trauma, really, that I didn't realize I was dealing with. Or sometimes if I'm deliberately struggling through something, it will appear in my stories and it will help me to navigate emotionally the problems that I'm dealing with or the questions that I'm struggling with. And so just for that alone, writing stories and creating art is really meaningful and really impactful to me. And I really enjoy every step of it. Even though I complain about it sometimes, I wouldn't be doing anything else. I am choosing this above so many other things that I can do. Everything about stories and art is so human, because whether you're creating it or you're just absorbing it and experiencing what someone else has created, you're part of this human experience and you're connected to everything. Like, I'm part of this world and I get to contribute to it and I get to experience what other people contribute to it as well. And that creates a very meaningful life to me. I know that got really deep, but all I'm trying to say is that this experience taught me so much. Whether or not it becomes a book, whether or not it becomes a tangible, sellable product in the end, it doesn't matter to me. I learned so much about myself through the writing and through this challenge that it was worth it in the end. I recommend that you guys all challenge yourself to do something and just go out there and create some art. If you are struggling or if you're doubting yourself or you're feeling insecure, just know that you're already doing something super challenging for yourself by creating art. You should revel in the experience and the process, because really that's what life is about. And that's what we should all focus on, not the byproduct, but the creation of it. I hope that this video helped you in some way and that maybe you go out and you challenge yourself to do something. Or if there's a project that you've been excited to work on, but you're just scared for some reason, now's the time to go do it, okay? Because we're all here for you, and I am rooting for you, and I hope that you share it with the world, or even just with me. I'm here for it. I will see you in the next video. Bye!